much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to thank my honourable friend, the member for East Ham, for securing this urgent question. Also to say to the Minister, I look forward to working with him constructively, but I can assure him that we will be robustly holding him to account as well. Madam Deputy Speaker, we know that there is a moral vacuum at the heart of this Conservative government, and we know that number 10 is a shambles and that the Home Office under this Home Secretary is not fit for purpose. This case brings all these fundamental flaws into one toxic combination of indifference and incompetence. The harrowing accounts that have emerged include a man who was held in a cell for months on end, wrongly accused of failing his test without any right to release or even to appeal. Students who have contributed so much to our country have been wrongly deported based on unreliable evidence and as a result have suffered intolerable and deep injustice and personal hardship. As one student put it, I want my future back. It goes without saying that the Labour Party supports the use of English language tests, and of course we support efforts to target cheating. But we must utterly condemn the blind eye that the Home Office turned to ETS's failings. Could the Minister therefore tell us why on earth did the Home Office think it appropriate to allow a discredited ETS to manage the initial investigation in 2014 and to rely on its deeply questionable data? If the government intends to continue to rely on ETS claims, and if so, how on earth can the Home Office be sure the data is reliable? What action the government plans to take to right these wrongs? And will he continue to force migrants through the demeaning process of lengthy legal battles rather than resolving this internally? And will he commit now from this dispatch box to a mechanism that will enable innocent students to clear their names? This is, of course, just one of a litany of Home Office failures under this Conservative government since 2010, from the Windrush scandal to data leaks to the ongoing small boats crisis. The Home Secretary must now take full responsibility for this shocking miscarriage of justice.
SNP spokesperson Stuart C. MacDonald.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I also pay tribute to the very tenacious honourable member for East Ham, also to Migrant Voice, to the immigration lawyers, and most of all to the students themselves who have all refused to accept the outrageous injustices that have been perpetrated upon them by the Home Office. Yes, there was significant fraud, but the Home Office has to waken up to the fact that there was systemic injustice on innocent students. And it came about because ETS, despite being put under criminal investigation, were then asked by the Home Office, that very same company, to be judge and jury of tens of thousands of students and to mark its own tainted, dodgy homework. That company's verdicts were accepted without question. No opportunity was provided to students to provide their own evidence, nor even to see or hear the evidence against them. That wasn't so much Home Office negligence, but maliciousness and one of the worst excesses of the hostile environment policy. So the questions today are, what is going to be done to fix it, and what lessons can be learned? On fixing it, it's not good enough to hide behind out-of-country appeals or judicial reviews. These are hopeless processes. He needs to consult upon a process that is independent and fast and can allow students to right the wrongs that have been meted upon them, and there will have to be a compensation scheme. And finally, what has the Home Office learned from all this? And isn't it about time this whole episode was also handed to Wendy Williams?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think the biggest lesson that was learned was the need to transform our student visa system from a system that was all too often a flag of convenience for those looking to come to work here in the UK, rather than those looking to genuinely study. And as we've touched on, the system now is absolutely transformed. It's one of our most compliant routes. It's allowed us to bring additional benefits like the graduate route that we created last year, plus more simplified processes for those applying for a student visa here in the UK, very much rooted in the excellent relationship we now have with the sector. And, having, let's be very clear, got rid of over 1,000 sponsors who, I think it's safe to say, were not meeting the high standards the sector more widely provides. In terms of the specifics, again, we are waiting the determination from the tribunal. I've already touched on the judgments that we've already had, up to and including the Court of Appeal, around the evidence that we used for the basis of our action. But once we have the determination of the tribunal, we'll be happy on our next steps.
Lynn Brown.
Grateful, Madam Deputy Speaker. One of my constituents was woken at 6 in the morning, dragged from the home he shares with his British wife and child, detained for days, lost the right to work and catapulted towards bankruptcy, unable to pay more legal costs and terrified of another knock on the door, year after year after year after year. And this isn't the story of one constituent, though it is, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is the story of many of my constituents. And all they want is a fair chance to clear their names. And frankly, I think they deserve compensation as well. So I really would be grateful to hear from the Minister. It's dragged on too long. The government has to create a process to end this scandal. When will it?
Minister.
Well, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Again, once we have the tribunal determination, we will set out more fully what our response is, rather than speculate on what that response may be. Today, as I say, though, other people are making applications under their private and family life. We have changed our guidance to make clear that it is not a block to making that application being granted that status, and that obviously decision makers in the Home Office now will take an appropriate balance between matters that were 8 years ago and against what someone's private or family life may be today, and what is the proportionate outcome.
Stephen Timms.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In 2011, the Home Office gave a licence to the US firm ETS to operate its TOEIC English language test to establish whether overseas students could speak English well enough to study in the UK. Nearly 60,000 students took that test over 3 years, but in 2014, as the Minister has said, Panorama exposed cheating at a number of TOEIC test centres, and the ETS licence was withdrawn. In response, ETS promised to analyse its recordings of all the students who'd taken that test, and they told the Home Office, having done that, later in 2014, that 96.5% of the students had either definitely or probably cheated. The Home Office seems to have failed even to ask the most basic questions about that absurd claim, now discredited, and went ahead and cancelled the visas of over 30,000 students. Contrary to what the Minister said, no appeal was available other than going back to your home country, and in reality there was no provision there to make an appeal. Thousands of innocent students had their futures destroyed. This morning, the original Panorama team has reported that ETS knew about the cheating well before the Panorama programme. It did nothing because it wanted to keep the revenue. The BBC has also reported the Home Office was told in 2012 by ETS whistleblowers, but instead of cancelling the licence then, allowed ETS to carry on for another 2 years. Thousands of innocent students were dragged into disaster as a result. Home Office failings have wrecked the lives of thousands of innocent people. The Home Secretary told the Home Affairs Committee a year ago that too many people had been hurt and that a resolution was needed, but there's been no progress since. Will the Minister now come forward with a straightforward mechanism promised by the previous Home Secretary 2.5 years ago to enable innocent students to clear their names and rebuild their lives?
Minister.
Well, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As was already being touched on, I'm not going to get into commenting more widely on some of the matters that are currently sub judice. But, I would again point out the scale of cheating that was going on and was exposed at the time was endemic. And it has to be said, it's a rather bizarre argument. We should have gone earlier and harder in terms of this particular issue. I would also say we have had the determination that I made in my statement very clear that up to the Court of Appeal have consistently found the evidence for invalid cases was enough for the Home Office to take the action it did. Now, as I've pointed out, there are opportunities for appeals. Of course, those who've been here for some time may well then be able to make claims based on their private life or human rights claims that then allow them to secure status here in this country. But I think the big core of all this is to reflect on what's happened over the last 10 years in terms of what was the then Tier 4 route and now the student route. You know, we have reformed a system that was wide open to abuse and which actually brought the name of our education sector into disrepute. We've created a new system, particularly the new student visa, which works for students, which works for the education sector, and crucially, which works in terms of the Home Office balancing the need for compliance alongside the wish to facilitate the ambitions of hundreds of thousands of people who wish to study at our world-leading institutions. You know, the student visa system is a world away from where it was in the past. I'd also finally point out that 20 people have actually been convicted for their role in this systemic and organised method of cheating English tests. So that speaks very strongly to the actions we did take. And as we say, there continues to be a process through the courts for those who wish to challenge the thing in their own case. And we do, as the right honourable member knows, encourage courts to make a determination if there is an allegation of dishonesty related to TOEIC in relation to it. But as we say, when the final judgment comes out from the panel, we will respond more fully.
Martin Day.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We all know that people cheated on the TOEIC tests. We also know that unreliable evidence has condemned many, perhaps thousands of innocent victims to a life of abject hardship and poverty. They are unable to work, they're unable to study, their lives have been put on hold and their reputations absolutely trashed. They need justice. So what mechanism can the Minister offer them that will not cost them further money that they simply do not have to get them out of this situation?
Minister.
Well, as touched on, you know, people can appeal to the courts, and many will get getting determinations based on their private and family lives. But you know, we've touched on already that courts up to and including the Court of Appeal have held that, you know, our approach, given the evidence we had of systemic cheating in the system, was appropriate and proportionate, but we await the latest determination, which will allow us to then announce what further steps we may wish to take.
Alex Sobel.
Thank you. I have English language schools in my constituency who are very high quality, very robust, who have dozens of former students whose lives are in limbo because of this scandal, and continue actually to suffer from the effects of it. The Minister said that they have the option of applying through the family life system, or they could go to court. Wouldn't it be better to consider actually case reviewing all of those cases and giving those people some justice?
Yes. Minister.
Well, as the member touches on, we now have a very strong system of English language tuition and also of both universities and other higher education institutions sponsoring under our student route, which works very well. It's highly compliant, an absolute world away from the system that existed 12 years ago. In terms of what he suggests on other areas, as we said, there is abilities for people to make private life applications if they're here in the UK. But in terms of a wider position, you know, I think it makes eminent sense that given we are awaiting a determination from the highest tribunal, effectively the upper tribunal presidential panel, it makes sense to actually have that determination and then consider what the next steps will be rather than announce